Billy here, coming at you from Tashkent in my lovely hotel room. It's weird, isn't it? Yeah, the dormer. I'm at the top floor. I hope that's not too distracting. I know it looks kind of weird on my screen, but we're just gonna roll with it. Uncle Billy's not into the green screens and all that stuff. That's I got enough trouble. I know people that are really into that stuff, and they always having to relearn everything. It's a lot of trouble. I don't have that kind of time. Anyway, morning. It's a little after 5. The internet's been out for quite a while here. I should have known that happened. I can't upload anything. I'm just gonna scrap everything and put this one right in. I think this is gonna be a good video. We're just gonna chat about this, that, and the other thing, and maybe some gravy will ooze out, and enlightenment and ideas and at least amusement. Yeah, that's what I'm gonna do. Wow. I would like to look at the news right now and just mock it. I feel up to it. I mean, sometimes I don't even want to look at it. It just makes me sick. I can't believe it. Pisses me off, the things they expect you to believe. And, well, that's not so bad. We know what they're doing. They're up to something. But what makes me angry is so many people believe it. But we know why they believe it, too. They want to be part of the narrative. They want some easy, simple, black and white story where they can signal how virtuous and patriotic they are by going against the boogeyman. No nuance. No thought. Enough of that. We built a really screwed up, fragile, dysfunctional society. Well, we didn't build it. We allowed it to be built by people that did so purposefully for their own reasons. Guess I don't need these. Reading glasses. A little far away for these to be effective. Well, maybe they're a prop. Do I look smarter? They do that. I suspect Anderson Cooper's glasses are just window panes. They have LASIK now. Vain people, and homosexuals especially, that really care about their appearance, they can get LASIK, especially if they're rich. They don't need glasses. They wear glasses to appear as intellectuals. A lot of them do. I'm going to put links in this one. This should have a lot of them. Gonzalo Lira did a great one. Yeah, I'm not going to spoil it. You need to watch it. I'm going to put it first. To show, well, I'm not even going to say anything. Just give it a look as it is. It's kind of hard to watch, but watch it. It's worth it. There's a payoff. And it's good to send it to your naive and gullible friends that buy into this stuff. It'll piss them off, and they probably never speak to you again, but they'll learn something. Anyway, talking about fragile societies, and everything's fragile. They keep showing these pictures of these huge fields full of brand new automobiles that were built in the USA, by golly. But they don't run, and they're not usable because they have to use chips supplied from China, who were presently our government is screwing around with China. Yeah, tell them what they can and can't do in the Sea of China and in the other areas surrounding China and in China's territory, and concerning China's little Taiwan. Oh, did I say China's Taiwan? Well, it is a spinoff from China. Chiang Kai-shek fled to Taiwan, and rather than incur the wrath of Mao. But that's really up to the Chinese, isn't it? Whose business is that? systems. Are they capitalist? Really? Taiwan's capitalist? Yeah. I dated a girl from Taiwan for quite a while. I learned quite a bit about it. What is capitalism? Really? Anyway, besides all that, the point being, we can't finish those cars until we get chips. How come they don't make chips in the U.S.? They're supposed to be all high-tech and everything. How come they source them from China? Well, your financial institutions have done all that. They've shut down the factories in the U.S. to get stuff made in China and pocket the difference. And the stuff is cheaper and sells better here, but they shut down your factories. It's a lot less of a headache just to get stuff made over there. You can get stuff manufactured there like that. It happens a lot. As a matter of fact, if you come up with a product, if you have a little home manufacturing, you got a little shop in back, and you come up with something really neat that people want, and you set up some jigs and you start cranking them out, what often happens is suddenly you'll see them on Alibaba, or they'll start showing up at the markets around your place, made in China, real cheap, crappy versions of what you're doing, because somebody could see they can see an idea that, oh, we'll get that made and make a lot of money, and they'll send a picture of it to their connection in China, and then you get a container load of them for peanuts. You can do that quick. You just look around at some of these outfits. One of my friends wanted to get something manufactured and mass produced in big numbers. It was fairly complicated things that he's wanting done, and he went to China and talked to all these people, went to their factories, and they wined and dined him and showed him everything they could do. He didn't end up doing it there. He ended up getting it done in India, and it was a disaster. It would have been a disaster in China too, because they wouldn't listen to him. They wouldn't make what he wanted. He was wanting to repop absolute, perfectly accurate replicas of parts for certain antique cars and motorcycles, rare ones. And they kept making improvements. They said, you don't need this seam here. We'll make one piece. No, I want it exactly like the old one. He took parts over, and he had to sign all kinds of papers and put in deposits to bring these antique parts into China. He wanted exact duplicates, but nobody could do it. They had the technology. They were just engineers, overeducated engineers, and they just refused to make them exactly like that because they could improve them. And it's like they couldn't get their head around. He wanted it exactly like the old ones. He was really frustrated. Anyway, they're making the chips. Nobody's here is making chips, really, I guess. That's what they tell us. There's something fishy about that, isn't it? I suppose it's possible. Invest all this money in making an expensive car, and you can't finish it because of a little piece of silicone. They made a fragile system. If that is true, if that's really what's happening, if there's not some spin behind it, or somebody's screwing somebody else or destroying another business purposely for some global geopolitical ends, which is possible, it's stupid. You've made a real fragile system. You look at the vehicles they make, and they're fragile. Everything on the vehicle runs through a computer. Everything's all interconnected. And there's so many people, oh, that's great, it's high tech, it's really cool. It's not cool, it's stupid. You've made a really fragile system. It's not repairable, only by people with specialized equipment and special parts. You go back to 1970, when cars still had points and were made out of real metal. You could fix anything on it with crude tools and readily available materials. You could keep it on the road if you've had a little smarts. You didn't have to be a genius, and you didn't have to have tons and tons and tons of special equipment and $100,000 and all these diagnostic equipment and stuff in your shop. You can make it run. You can fix it right too, And a lot of people did that, and they made decent livings at it. They didn't get rich, but they had a good living as a mechanic. And you can't have that system anymore because the people that are manufacturing want all the money. And I saw that happen. The 90s is when they really made the big push. The cars started going downhill In the mid-70s. The manufacturing, the way they built them, they started making things really cheap and not repairable. A lot of disposable stuff. And the government got involved, and you have all these little plastic doodads everywhere with wires and hoses going to them for pollution control. And these things don't last. They're plastic. And then they started tuning the engines where they put out way too much heat, destroys everything, to save the environment. I don't know about that either. It's kind of dubious. When I first came over here, actually it would have been, well, here in Uzbekistan is where I first got my taste of Eastern Europe. This isn't Eastern Europe, this is Asia, but it's post-Soviet space. Something I noticed when you walk out on the street back then, 17 years ago, they had all of the Ladas and Zigulis and Soviet cars, Urals and Zils everywhere, and they'd go by, and it was nostalgic, the smell of exhaust that smelled just like it did back when I was a kid, before unleaded and before all these additives and before catalytic converters. Pure, crude exhaust smell. I kind of like it, but I'm a motorhead. It's supposed to be bad for you. If there's too much, I can see that, but what they're doing's probably not good either. Now you got cars that you can't drive. And a 200-acre field full of cars that nobody can use. Maybe never will. They keep screwing around with China to find out. Are they scrambling to manufacture their own chips here? I don't see any evidence of that, so something's up. Why can't we have things that are not fragile? It would be nice if you could buy a car or vehicle, some sort of vehicle, that's crude enough where you could maintain it yourself, where it's made so it's easy to maintain, it's easy to check everything and keep track of it, and if anything goes wrong, you can fix it with easy to find stuff. Just stock, regular over-the-counter materials and crude tools, low technology. There's a market for that. There really is. Do you see that being filled anywhere? I thought we had a market-driven economy. We can't get anything like that anywhere. It's impossible. A lot of it's control. They want things that they could switch off when you say something they don't like. They want it all. Eventually, they're going towards that. They're not there yet, but they're going towards everything being totally central controlled by a central computer, which is on the 5G network, which is in communication with some nameless, faceless entity. Banks of computers that they'll call AI. It's not really AI. It's, algorithms and analysis of everything coming in, lots of inputs. And they'll be able to track according to your number who owns that car. They know who owns it. And if you screw up somehow and say something they don't like or do something they don't like, well, they can shut it off. And they can follow you around. They can see exactly where you go. You have drive-by-wire. They're already making cars that have drive-by-wire. You don't have a direct connection between the steering wheel and the wheels. I find that disturbing. Sends an impulse through the computer to servos that move the wheels to steer them. Oh, that's just really high-tech. You really trust that thing? Computers ever go sideways on you? And you're going to trust it with your steering. Could something go wrong? Well, it's worth it because they can control your steering. Why do they want to control your steering? And your accelerator? I'd think about that. What's the matter, Billy? Don't you trust the government? You could have decentralized manufacturing and make really safe, nice, pleasant, nice-looking cars that could be maintained in your village, in your community. And what would help would be a platform, an internet platform. Now, I wouldn't want to be too dependent on that, but still, that would really get things going. But I think it would probably get some people's attention, and they'd do everything they could to stamp it out and stop it. But that's not to be discouraged. Things are going to change, I think. The United States might be and Canada might be the very last countries in the world to adopt a new system that's multipolar, that's fair, and that's locally controlled, they're probably going to hold out to the very last. And the worst of the worst are going to be driven over to them. If you may not know it, but there is an international movement, and it's highly organized, called Eurasianism or Neo-Eurasianism. And you've probably heard all kinds of horrifying things about it. But they're trying to put together a multipolar world to resist the one world government, to resist the New World Order, the Great Reset, all the things they want to call it, to resist that and make it where you have local control to protect traditions and cultures, and then they will be lined up in regions, and the regions will be lined up in spheres of influence that don't really have any sort of say-so in anything in each other's affairs. It's doable, and you can have a political architecture, an economic architecture that rewards honesty. It's been done. And there's a lot of people that are excited about that. They're organizing as international organizations. I'm going to put some links where you can discover this stuff for yourself. And when you Google it, then you get nothing but hit pieces on Alexander Dugin telling you he's a Satanist and an occultist and a communist and a Bolshevik and a monarchist and wants to start a theocracy. And all these things contradict each other, you know that. And there's all kinds of people that prove that and make him out to be the biggest boogeyman on the planet. But if you really understand the guy and read his books, yes, he's changed over the years, and so have I. Some of the earlier Dugin was, he had some kind of scary ideas, but they've evolved into what they are now, which is really a pretty good system, Neo-Eurasianism. Anyway, there's that. That's encouraging. I don't know about the organization. This is something that they try to stay away from making a political party out of it, because that'll crash and burn. It's got to be something bigger than that. It's got to be a fundamental, foundational ideology of local control and goals to protect tradition, to protect the family. And this is where Americans get upset. You're not only going to protect Christian tradition, but you're also going to protect Muslim and Buddhist traditions. Why not? They're made in the image of God too. They have light and assets, and God's got a plan for them as well. And you shoving things down their throat and trying to force them to convert isn't right. It's not going to do any good. That's not what you're supposed to be doing. I have Muslim friends, and I've had, oh God, I sound like a virtue signaling. I have known people who are Muslims that I had an enormous amount of respect for, because they exuded gravitas. They did what they said they're going to do. They had integrity. That's it, integrity. They exuded integrity. You just feel it around them. I haven't seen many Christians like that. I'm not knocking Christianity. I am a Christian. But in practice, one culture developed differently than the other one. And it has its virtues. And it has its faults. Both of them have virtues and faults. All God's people. How did I get there? I was talking about cars, wasn't I? Oh, okay. Roll with it. Anyway, wouldn't it be nice to do things like that? Put a platform. Make a platform on the web. Just assuming we're going to have internet that we can control someday, where you can have a place where you can buy any kind of parts you want. You have to have some standardization. You've got a suggested standard part. Simple, refined. I think we can do that for, say, an engine, a universal engine. You can use it on a pump. You could use it on a air compressor. You could put it in a vehicle. Small, maybe 1 liter engine. And people could make all the components of it in home manufacturing. I'm not talking about this 3D printing crap either. I don't see a whole bunch of virtue to that because of the materials that you have to use. Now, you need real materials. You need materials that have the right density and the right hardness for a lot of things. But somebody could set up to make each component. You could make it on video, or you could test it on video. You could make castings. You could pull out the castings, clean them off, and have a jig where you're on camera videoing, checking go, won't go, locations, sizes. Yes, it checks. You can hang it and ring it. Ding, doesn't have any cracks. Real simple tests. And that could all be categorized. That could all be archived, where you have a digital quality control for each part, and it goes on, and people can look and see your quality control, and they can see everything. You have certain guarantees. You have a rating where people can rate you. There's all kinds of things you can introduce in the system, and then people that want to be assemblers and want to build things, they can buy these parts. Decentralized manufacturing. Instead of having a plant that's acres and acres and acres, you have all these individuals scattered all over the place building things, and they come together through good transportation infrastructure. People can assemble them, and you have your choices of different things, different sizes. It could be done. It'd be pretty sweet. And the focus would be on resilience, non-fragility, ease of maintenance. When I was a kid, my dad had a lot of old artifacts in the garage, and Dad, what's this? It's the Model T coil. Let me show you something, son. Is a wooden box. Is about as big as your maybe a large box of baking soda or something like that. Maybe a little bigger. It's a pretty good size wooden box. Very finely made, hardwood, dovetailed, and it had a sliding door. You could slide this door out. What's inside it? Primary and secondary windings, wire, ferrite material. If that coil burnt up, you could open it up and pull the wire out and go to a hardware store and buy a roll of wire and rewind it. That's non-fragility. That's resilient, a simple system you can fix yourself. Now, it wasn't a great coil. It wasn't as efficient and effective as a modern coil. It didn't even have any oil in it. I mean, it was dry. Something like that. That's maybe going a little too far. Somebody manufacture coils, and they'd be inexpensive and readily available. You don't have to make one that you can rewind if you want to. It's kind of cool, though. It's just a concept of that. Anyway, why can't we have nice things? Local control. The trees, and I mentioned this on my last video, which I didn't get to download because I don't have any internet. I'll put it in before I put this one in. It's a fairly short one. I'm walking around looking at these trees around here. Or maybe that was a video before. It might be in there. Anyway, don't listen to me. I forget what I've been doing. Anyway, there's lots of huge, beautiful trees lining the streets down here. And I talked about my hometown and others like it, where they ripped them all out to widen the roads. And now the towns are empty, don't have any businesses in them. So yeah, a fat lot of good that did. And they also ripped them out because somebody with a tree service sits on this village board. That's how that works. That's why we can't have nice things. Yay, capitalism. No, the trees belong to the people in the community. They didn't have any right to do that. They didn't have any sort of careful protection for such things. Now, if a tree's causing a problem, you got a limb that's hollow and rotten and ready to drop on something, yeah, but taking them all out to avoid liability, which the city has exempted itself from anyway, because somebody has a tree service and a crane and they can charge the city and they want a little work. Having a local government that's accountable and has a mentality that all this infrastructure and all these natural resources here in this whole area, in this community and the surrounding areas belong to the community. People have private property and it's theirs, but they can't destroy the value of other people's property. It's really very simple. But you start talking like that and Americans automatically, well, that's communism, that's socialism, that doesn't work. Look at Venezuela. Yeah. Blockades and having their gold stolen. Now they're poor. See? Just jumping around from one extreme to the other because you're trained to do that by the media. And you take they lead you into that stuff. Protecting your community and your resources and your environment from the depredations of slippery people is not socialism. It's the social contract that needs to happen that's been neglected and usurped in America by slippery people. We're way, way down the road, and they want to do it worldwide. They're trying to set up a worldwide infrastructure where they can exploit everything. The Internet of Things, the Great Reset. Have you read the books? Have you seen what they want to do? You listen to their TED Talks. They want to track and trace everything. I'm not talking about an internet platform for quality control for parts that you can buy and put in a machine. They want everything to have a blockchain number. Everything. I mean, everything. The fillings in my teeth? Probably. These glasses? No, every part of these glasses would have a number and be registered in a central world system. You wouldn't be able, in their world, to pick a stick up in the woods and carve a spoon out of it. That'd be illegal. It'd have to have a chip. It'd have to be registered. It'd have to be taxed. You'd have to pay somebody to do that. You'd have to pay them to carve it, to manufacture it. You'd have to give them a cut if you sold it. You'd have to give them some money if you used it. If you threw it in the fire, you'd have to give them money for that too. It's going to be everything is made, they get paid. It's used, they get paid. It's thrown away, they get paid. It's burned for energy, they get paid. That's efficiency. That's getting every single possible fraction of a shekel out of everything that happens on the planet. That's what they want. Do these sound like normal people to you? And they put their minions and useful idiots and deranged people in charge of everything. I mean, listen to these people. See their ideas and the things they come up with. They're in charge. It's like they have the minds of 6-year-olds. Everything's some sort of cartoonish nightmare. And they're like mean little girls club. And those are your leaders. We can all see that. It doesn't have to be that way. And you start talking about organizing, trying to put something together to counter this, and you got to do it on a local level. You have to look at who's in charge, who has authority in your neighborhood. Police officers, elected officials. You need to have a relationship with them, and you need to get rid of them legally if possible. You need to get rid of them if they're going along with this stuff and replace them. That's supposed to be what we do in democracies, right? Very few people are doing that. And when you start talking about that, then all the black-pilled people show up, you know. Nobody's going to come and rescue you. You can't do anything because they're all together in their world. You know, they start telling you how powerful these people, as though these people are a monolithic block. They're not. They're a bunch of dirty little animals that are gunning for positions for themselves, and they throw each other under the bus. They're always looking for opportunities to do that. They are weak, and they can be controlled, and they can be pushed back, and they can be bunched up in a nice little ball and pushed over the cliff. And you can do that. You just need to organize. But there's always these people that are supposedly on our side that resist organization. There's nothing you can do. They just want to clutch their pearls and tell you about, oh, look what they're doing. The UN is taking over and there's no national sovereignty and they're going to make the WHO the ruler of the world and there's nothing you can do about it. You live in a constitutional republic. Legally, you're in the best position. And there's nothing you can do. Nobody's going to come rescue you. These people have such faith. Where does that come from? Whose side are you on anyway? See it on the internet all the time. Maybe they're bots. No, they're not bots. I've met them. I was inspired by the People's Republics in eastern Ukraine. When this stuff started kicking off, after the coup, when the U.S. government took over Ukraine and installed their puppets in there so they could do what they wanted, and it was a long setup. I was there. I lived there. I saw U.S. aid and all these NGOs in there, what they were doing. We're training journalists. We're helping the children. Yeah, they got everything all set up, and then they took over and they put their people in. And it's like red state, blue state. It's just like the U.S. Let me try it. I'm winging this, so this might not go well. I'll try. I'll give you an analogy. Say an alternative universe, an alternative history. We elected Donald Trump, but say in this alternative history, the U.S. is like Ukraine. All the industrial areas are in one place. They're in the, let's put them in the South, just for the fun of it. Texas, Arkansas, Louisiana, Mississippi, they all big industrial centers. They got mines, they got steel works. They make all the money. And then in the North, and the rest of the country is all like California. It's all managers and bureaucrats and actors and tourism and beautiful people. And there's a lot of Canadians in the North too. Okay. Ukraine, you've got your Polish and your Hungarians and your German people for centuries mixed with your Western Ukrainians, where the tourism is and where the management is. In the East, that was Russia. That was given to the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic in 1922 by Lenin. Noye Russia, New Russia, from Kharkov all the way down to Odessa, including Crimea, was given, well, except Crimea. Crimea was given later. Originally, Crimea stayed with Russia. Noye Russia went to the Ukrainian Soviet Socialist Republic. That's why it's full of Russians. Most of my followers know that. But just for your information, we'll reiterate that again. Because the U.S. claims that, well, the Soviet Union flooded Ukraine with Russians. That's the problem. Yeah, they flooded it by erasing the borders and redrawing them behind them. Anyway, back to my analogy. Say we have a bunch of Quebecese and Canadians in the north, so they're a little bit different people. And over centuries, this is kind of spread and rooted in culture. Maybe we took parts of Canada and made them into the United States, but the industrial belt is in the South. And those Southern people keep voting for conservatives, and they voted Trump in. And say China helps install a coup government and have a revolution. First chaos, then you bring mercenaries in, you shoot people on both sides. Yeah. Actual Nazis involved and take over the government. And then say, we're going to have a cleansing anti-terrorist operation in these deplorable states. That's what they did in Ukraine to the eastern provinces. And here's where I drew a lot of inspiration, because when they went in with the anti-terrorist operation, they just sent the regular military with their Nazi commanders. I mean, the private Nazi organizations were incorporated into the army. I think it was a bit later, though, but they were there. They were following instructions to go in and clear out the terrorists from eastern Ukraine. All Russians are terrorists. All Russian speakers are terrorists. That's what they pretty much declared. And they were talking openly about filtration camps. Anyway, when they went in to do that, the first thing the people of those areas did is they removed people that were in office that were helping with this. The people that were opposed to the local control of the government. And they put people in. There wasn't very many of them, but they threw them out of office, put other people in. They formed committees, they elected people. And then the police went and set up roadblocks and stopped the army and disarmed them. In the early days, that actually happened. They'd stop the light armor and the BMTs and the trucks coming in, and they'd say, you're not going in here. The police did that. And with the people backing them, and they took their weapons away in a lot of cases. Now, Ukrainians, the people in East Ukraine, you don't have every other person has an AR-15 in their closet that they're going to fight the government with. That's what Americans fall back on. It's not a workable plan. What they had weapons caches from the Soviet days with real weapons, indirect fire, anti-aircraft, manpads, things like that. They had this stuff, and it was held collectively by committees of people within the local government. That's how they were able to fight this thing off. Carpenters, miners, brick masons, metal workers, factory workers, taxi drivers, they all volunteered and they defended their country. They resisted the coup government that was trying to come in and clean them out. And they did it successfully. And the West lied to you about it. Russians are in there. The Russian army went in there secretly. And they couldn't produce any proof of that because they didn't. They didn't go in there and help them. There were advisors and they'd sneak in some weaponry, but not much. They never did show any proof of it at all. They might not have. I'm pretty sure they did, but there's no evidence of it. It couldn't have been very much. But they were able to just kick their ass. They really humiliated the Ukrainian army. So then the U.S. pours in mercenaries, Blackwater guys, Polish mercenaries, not Blackwater anymore, whatever the hell they are, Academy, XC, and all their little subdivisions. I used to work with those guys in Iraq and Afghanistan, especially in Iraq. They brought those guys in. They brought in advisors. There were actual British and American Special Forces guys in there too. And they still got their asses handed to them again and again and again. This can't be true. Russians must have invisible divisions in there because these guys couldn't bring themselves to believe that that's possible. It is possible. They did it. Unbelievable. They defended their ground. Oh, then they bombed them. They brought in aircraft and they bombed the cities and they bombed residential areas. And then they started shelling them with indirect fire. They set up artillery just out of reach and they shelled and they shelled and they shelled. They purposefully shelled kindergartens. They purposefully shelled hospitals, shopping centers, and factories. They did this at the U.S. direction because that's what the U.S. does. You've proved it again and again. You bombed residential areas in Serbia. You did it in Libya. You did it all over the freaking planet. And 8 years of this went on. Okay, I got off trail here. I'm talking about my my thought experiment. Let's go back to that. But I have to tell you what's going on that I'm reflecting this off of. Say the same thing happened in the U.S. in the theoretical alternative universe U.S. This is getting too complicated, isn't it? The blue states start an anti-terrorist campaign and go after the deplorables. We're going to set up camps. We're going to find these people. We're going to punish them. We'll even start brigades and call them the Punishers. And we'll put Antifa in our military as an official part of it. And we'll get, let's say the Chinese are behind it. I don't think they would do something like that. But, let's just say, for the sake of argument, the Chinese represents the U.S. in my world. The Chinese are command and control. They staged a revolution, set the whole thing off. And they're the ones calling the shots. Go in and get them people. Wipe them out. They don't belong there. Get rid of them. What are they doing here? Deplorables. Now we need a unified U.S. to take over the whole North and South America and make it under our control. That's what's happening. But say the South fights back and does a real good job of it. And again, they go down for anti-terrorist operations with their foreign troops and with their high-tech weapons. And they go off into it and they get closed off and surrounded in a cauldron and they get pounded and wiped out. Say that happens 9 times. That's what happened in Ukraine. 9 times those idiots went in and got their asses handed to them. The 9th time is when there was a big one. They did a surge like they did in Afghanistan. The big surge, or was that Iraq, or both? I don't know. I remember the surge. I was there. I don't remember which one it was. But U.S. military doctrine, a surge. We get a big enough operation and go down into them. And that surge got surrounded and trapped in a cauldron. And that surge had a lot of foreign helpers in it. Truce, truce. That's when you had the Minsk agreements, where they agreed to the Minsk agreements and Europe's going to enforce it, right? Really? Yeah. And so, okay, they let him escape, let him go off, and then Ukraine never fulfilled it. They just kept bombing the Donbas. They kept shelling. They kept at it. They ignored the Minsk agreements because the OFC or whatever it is, the international bodies that monitor things, yeah, they're pretty dirty. They wouldn't report who's shelling who. They just said shelling, and then the media spin it as those Russian rebels, those pro-Russian separatists. Yeah, they're pro-Russians because they're Russian people. Well, that's it in a nutshell. Oh, the OFCE, I think that's, yeah, OFCE, the International Monitoring Body set up cameras to monitor, and the feed went to the Ukrainian army so they could target things. It's been proven. They're being used to target for targeting purposes. So that's how effective your international bodies are. That's how clean they are. Well, they proved it back in Serbia. The OFCE guy, Williams? I don't remember his name off the top of my head. An OFCE guy lied about, I'm going from memory here, I might be saying the wrong things, but you can look it up. Foreign troops came in wearing uniforms and attacked them. The Serbs killed them. Well, they put civilian clothes around in the area and says, well, they're massacring civilians. And that's what set the whole thing off, where they started bombing residential areas. NATO did in Serbia because of the lies of one man. Has he been prosecuted? No. They're dirty. It's international. It's part of the world order, New World Order. They put their people everywhere they needed them to start doing this stuff. But they're losing. It's already over. There's no telling what's going to happen. They're going to kick and scream and damage as much as possible on the way out, but they're on the way out. And that's good news. It's encouraging. But you need to prepare. I think the worst of it's going to come back on the U.S. and Canada. It's just by spiritual principles. You dig a pit for your neighbor, you're going to fall into it. You set a snare for your neighbor, you're going to get caught in it. And that's what's happening next. The Nazis lost in Ukraine already. It's all over. What you're hearing in the news is absolute BS. I saw yesterday, they said, well, this war will be over and Ukraine will win by the end of the year. That's what your media is telling you. What a joke. They've already lost. There's no way they can win anything. So what are these 80-year-old apparatuses that were set up to fight the Soviets, like NATO and, well, the Nazis in the Baltics, the Nazis in Ukraine? Their support network and their financial network and their command and control and intelligence is all woven into the fabric of Canada, big time, and to a lesser extent in the United States. What do you think is going to happen next? There are old, crappy weapons going over there, but they're not getting in. Those that do get in get taken away or destroyed. A lot of them aren't going in. What's going to happen with those? Who's going to use them? What are they going to do next? It's not going to be in Ukraine. The United States economy is collapsing. It's inevitable. What's going to happen then? It's going to be pretty bad. It's going to be ripe for revolution. A U.S. Maidan. We're going to stop corruption, get people out in the streets, and then the controllers start sending their goons in and their people. Yeah. They're going to turn the United States into the next Ukraine. A lot of people saying they're going to do it to Taiwan. That's not going to be tolerated. Chinese know about this stuff. It won't go that far. They're not as patient and nice as the Russians, where they sit there and watch their own people get massacred for 8 years. And then they do something about it. What if they pull that off, a scenario like that, and there's a Maidan in the United States, and a coup government takes over, controlled by international organizations that include their goon squads of Ukrainian Nazis, Canadian Nazis, Antifa, Canadian Nazis. They're there. It's Ukrainian diaspora. Lots of them are. They're organized in network. They're pretty well off too. They've got their networks. They've got everything in place. Canadian Nazis. Doesn't that fall on the ears kind of weird? Well, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to exterminate you. No hard feelings, eh? Sorry. What's going to happen next? You best be prepared for it. Make your own anti-fragile systems. Make your own communities. Don't participate in any of this stuff. It's going to look like we're going to finally have a great revolution. Maybe they're going to reinstall Trump. Well, the people behind that might not be the people that you think they are. I mean, it's something you need to consider. Even if Q and Trump and all that stuff is legit and absolutely real, I got my doubts. But even if it is, that can be spun. That can be pushed by other forces that then move in to take over. That's how they do Bolshevik revolutions. It's how they did the original one when they created the Soviet Union. The Mensheviks and the Bolsheviks. The Mensheviks wanted a liberal type government. They wanted to model it after the United States, and they were the big party. The media was controlled by the Bolsheviks, so they called the Bolsheviks the big party, Bolsheviks the big party. They were really a minority. The Mensheviks, who the media labeled, was really the big party. The revolution was captured, directed, and controlled, and you wound up with the Soviet Union. You wound up with the terror. You wound up with the execution factories and all that. Could it happen in America? Go talk to some college kids and see what they're into, what they're all about. Where are the communists? They're not even communists. They're neo-communists, or not even that. They're identity politic freaks. I don't know. I live in interesting times. I'm glad I'm not there. That was a nice thing to say. I apologize. But I worked really hard and put up with a lot of deprivation and hard times to stay here. And I think it's going to pay off. But I want to help. And I'm doing the best I can. Anyway, this is getting kind of long. Hope I had some ideas in here to kind of stimulate your own thinking about things and research. I want to inspire people too. It is possible to resist this, but you have to organize. You have to at least know your neighbors. You have to know what kind of people to avoid. I went around and looked at militias back when Obama got reelected, just to check them out and see what kind of resistance there was, what's going to happen. I saw this stuff coming. I didn't have any idea it was going to be so long or be like it's the way it's going, because it's much more complex than I thought it was. But I met people that were they were well organized, but they didn't have any sense. They were just an organization of a bunch of Rambos, and everybody wanted to be in charge, and they were wide open to being controlled. They were liabilities. All of them were. I asked the president of a certain chapter in a certain state of a militia, do you have some sort of alternative secure communications set up? And they're like, I can tell they had never thought of it, never heard of the concept. I asked a bunch of simple questions like that, and I got deer in the headlights looks. Do you know your neighbors? Your neighbor, way up there on the hill, on the top of the hill. You know, you live on a dead-end road, but your neighbor's up there at the front of it. You have a relationship with them? Oh, no, we don't associate with those people. You guys are freaking idiots. Do you have any intelligence? Do you have people like infiltrating, your city government just to see what's going on and have their ears open? They never thought of it. They think because they got an AR-15 in their closet, they can stave off the federal government. No. They can come and take that, and you'll come out with your hands on your head and drop to your knees just like everybody else, and your neighbors will look the other way. You don't have any solidarity, you don't have any community, you don't have any intel, you don't have any alternative communications, you don't have any freaking plan. Just a bunch of idiots LARPing as a Rambo. You think that's going to work? Look at the model. Look at how they did it in the People's Republics. Now that turns you off because they call themselves People's Republics. They must be communist. If the South broke off again from the New World Order, you think people will be flying Confederate flags? You think there'd be some nostalgia for the last time? Does that mean that they want to have slavery? No. You got to understand culture and symbolism. And like I said, I'm trying to lay out the ground that protecting your local community and communal ownership of your infrastructure and resources is not socialism, dumbass. It's necessary. Just some principles Americans need to learn. They need to get their heads around it because they have this automatic knee-jerk reaction to things that will protect them from the New World Order. The New World Order, the Great Reset, whatever you want to call it, it's run by billionaires. Stop licking their boots and stop empowering them. Because, well, they're capitalists and that's what made America great. Okay, I'm going to shut this off. I've said enough. Kind of a ramble, but I think there's some good in it. Let me know with your comments. I'll put some good links down in here. The first is going to be Gonzalo's thought experiment to demonstrate rhetoric. It's kind of hard to watch, but you'll like it. Anyway, Uncle Billy signing out.